Late April to early May 1943, in an olive grove outside Tunis, Allied scouts found what intelligence officers later called the single most valuable prize of the North African campaign. Tiger 712 sat abandoned, intact, and working. The huge German's heavy tank rested quietly among gnarled olive trees, its 88mm gun still. The crew had fled without blowing up the vehicle. No demolition charges had been set. In the confusion of total military collapse, the Germans had left one of their most feared weapons for the Allies to capture whole. What the Allies would learn from this 60-ton steel monster proved more useful than destroying a dozen Tigers in battle. The tank showed not only German engineering skill but also a critical strategic weakness that made even the most powerful weapon fragile on campaign. An enormous appetite for fuel that made sustained operations impossible over long distances. The North African campaign ended in disaster for the Axis. Between May 7 and May 13, 1943, about 230,000 German and Italian troops surrendered in Tunisia. The entire Afrika Korps ceased to exist as a fighting force. Among those captured were survivors from Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, one of Germany's top armored units equipped with Tiger tanks. Tigers began to arrive in Tunisia in late November 1942. 3 Tigers from Heavy Panzer Battalion 501 reached Tunis on November 23, 1942, marking the combat debut of German heavy tanks in North Africa. More Tigers arrived through December and January, eventually bringing the battalion to about 20 operational vehicles. The Tiger's fearsome reputation traveled ahead of it. Soviet units on the Eastern Front had met these giants in January 1943 near Leningrad. Red Army reports said Tigers could destroy T-34 medium tanks at ranges over 2,000 meters. The Tigers carried the famous 88mm gun, adapted from Germany's effective anti-aircraft weapon for anti-tank use. This gun could pierce any Allied tank's frontal armor at ranges where return fire was nearly impossible. American forces first heard about German super heavy tanks in early February 1943 through British intelligence. The descriptions sounded exaggerated to soldiers used to fighting Panzer III and Panzer IV medium tanks. Intelligence reports spoke of a tank over 55 tons with 100mm frontal armor and a main gun that could knock out Allied tanks beyond 2 kilometers. Many American tankers shrugged these reports off as British hype. The reality proved worse than the warnings. On February 14, 1943, German forces launched Operation FO-14 striking American positions at Phi Pass in central Tunisia. Elements of the 21st Panzer Division, bolstered by Tigers from Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, attacked Combat Command A of the U.S. 1st Armored Division. The Battle of City Build, on February 14 of 15, showed Tiger's superiority clearly. Combat Command C of the 1st Armored Division counterattacked on February 15 with 52 Sherman medium tanks. The Germans had set anti-tank guns in a classic ambush, with Tigers supporting from longer range. When Combat Command C pulled back, 46 of the 52 Shermans were destroyed or disabled. A post-battle survey 3 weeks later mapped wrecked American tanks and determined which weapons had knocked them out. Surprisingly, only 1 Sherman had been hit by an 88mm round, whether from a Tiger or towed 88mm guns. Most American tanks were taken out by 50mm guns from Panzer IIIs or 75mm guns from Panzer IVs. The survey showed that Tigers were few in number, but their psychological impact far exceeded their actual presence on the battlefield. The Battle of Kasserine Pass, starting February 19, 1943, gave American ground forces their first experience of large-scale fighting against seasoned German armor. Tigers took part in the offensive, though in limited numbers. Shermans with 75mm guns had to close within about 300 meters to hope to penetrate a Tiger's armor from the flank or rear. Tigers, by contrast, could engage effectively from 2,000 meters with near impunity against frontal attacks. The psychological effect on American crews was severe. Army medical officers recorded what they called tiger phobia among tankers who had faced the heavy tanks. The mere rumor of tigers in an area made American units call for airstrikes and artillery preparation before advancing. That fear multiplied the tiger's tactical value far beyond the number of vehicles present. By March 1943, training materials were produced specifically to counter tiger phobia among American armored units. Intelligence reports stressed that tigers were rare, had weaknesses, and could be neutralized with proper tactics. Still, the training offered little practical advice for Sherman crews facing tigers in direct combat, beyond the unsatisfying counsel to call for artillery or air support. In the final weeks of the Tunisian campaign in April and early May 1943, another tiger vulnerability became obvious. Mechanical breakdowns, lack of spare parts, and fuel shortages immobilized more tigers than Allied action did. Heavy Panzer Battalion 501 had arrived in Tunisia with 20 Tigers and 16 Panzer III support tanks. By the end of April, only a few remained operational. The rest were abandoned or destroyed by their crews as German forces collapsed. The battalion's war diary, captured by British forces and later shared with American intelligence, recorded the decline week by week. December 1942. Entries showed 20 Tigers operational on arrival. By December 28, only 14 were operational, with 8 down for repairs. Spare parts were scarce. Fuel was irregular and too limited for sustained operations. By January 30, 1943, only 11 Tigers remained operational. The diary warned that fuel shortages were growing critical, and that each Tiger needed steady supplies of fuel, oil, and spare parts that German logistics in North Africa could not reliably provide. March entries listed only 6 operational Tigers, the rest disabled by mechanical failure or lack of fuel. Requests for replacement engines were refused. Headquarters reported no engines available anywhere in the theater. The April 20th entry captured the desperation. Allied offensives were breaking through German lines. Orders to retreat arrived, but fuel allowed only limited movement. Many Tigers would have to be abandoned. Demolition teams were swamped trying to destroy so much equipment. Inevitably, some vehicles fell into enemy hands intact. Tiger 712 never received demolition charges. Its crew, facing overwhelming Allied pressure and almost no fuel, left the vehicle in the olive grove near Tunis. Whether they expected demolition teams to reach it later or simply fled to save their own lives is unknown. The chaos of total collapse left many questions unanswered. Lieutenant Sue of the 104th Tank Workshop, Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, documented the discovery of Tiger 712 on June 9, 1943. His report said the tank was functional and intact in the olive grove alongside other abandoned German vehicles, including at least 2 other Tigers and a Panzer III. The grove seemed to have been used as a makeshift workshop, with 1 Tiger's engine covers removed. Demolition had destroyed 1 Tiger completely, but Tiger 712 remained untouched. The find electrified Allied intelligence communities. Colonel George B. Jarrett, who led the Foreign Material Branch at Abedine Proving Ground in Maryland, was informed that American troops had captured a Tiger tank in perfect condition. This was an incredible opportunity for Allied intelligence. For months, Allied forces had faced Tigers in battle without fully knowing how they worked or what their weaknesses were. Now they finally had one they could examine and test in detail. Recovering the tank itself showed just how massive it was. Tiger 712 weighed almost 57 tons when ready for battle. American M31 recovery vehicles were only meant to tow 30-ton Sherman tanks. To move the Tiger, several recovery vehicles had to work together along with bulldozers and other heavy equipment. The convoy carrying Tiger 712 from where it was found to the port of Tunis traveled mostly at night to avoid any chance of being spotted by the German Air Force, though by May 1943, German aircraft in Tunisia were almost completely gone. Engineers had to check every bridge to make sure it could hold the weight. Some roads couldn't support the Tiger and its transport trailer. A trip that would normally take 4 hours ended up lasting 3 days. At the port, loading the Tiger onto a ship brought more challenges. The tank and its metal cradle together weighed over 65 tons, so engineers needed heavy-duty cranes that could lift at least 70 tons. After finding the right equipment, they loaded Tiger 712 onto the Liberty ship SS Samuel P. Bush for the journey across the Atlantic. The trip took about 3 weeks, with the ship reaching Norfolk, Virginia in early July 1943. From there, Tiger 712 was transported on a specially reinforced rail car to Abedine Proving Ground, arriving in mid-July. Abedine Proving Ground was the U.S. Army's main testing center for weapons and armored vehicles. Engineers and intelligence officers had already spent months preparing by studying captured German manuals, translating documents, and reviewing reports from the battlefield. Brigadier General Gladian M. Barnes, head of research and development for Army Ordnance, sent clear orders to the testing teams. This captured Tiger was the best chance yet to study the enemy's most dangerous tank in full detail. The tests would cover everything: armor, firepower, engine reliability, movement, and fuel use. Initial inspection revealed impressive German engineering. The Tiger used a complex interlocking road wheel system with torsion bar suspension, giving it excellent balance and smooth movement over rough ground. Its Maybach Olvar transmission had 8 forward and 4 reverse gears, allowing it to move backward almost as fast as it moved forward, a major advantage in defensive fighting. The 88mm gun could fire armor-piercing shells at over 900 meters per second with great accuracy. The armor was extremely thick, 100 mm on the front hull and turret, up to 200 mm around the gun mount, and 60 to 80 mm on the sides. This made the Tiger nearly impossible to destroy from the front using most Allied weapons. However, something else caught the engineers' attention: its fuel usage. The Tiger had 4 fuel tanks holding 532 liters, or about 140 U.S. gallons, in the rear of the tank. Its Maybach 12-cylinder engine produced 690 horsepower, strong but barely enough for its enormous 57-ton weight. German manuals stated the tank could travel about 195 km, 121 miles, on roads under perfect conditions, and about 110 kilometers, 68 miles, off-road. To the Americans, this seemed very short compared to the range of their own Sherman tanks. Testing continued at Aberdeen from July 1943 to January 1944, 6 months of detailed trials. Fuel testing was the top priority because it directly affected how far the tank could operate in real combat. U.S. military tactics focused on fast, mobile warfare, where tanks often had to fight far from supply bases. A tank that couldn't travel long distances without refueling would be a serious problem, no matter how powerful it was. On paved roads, tests confirmed the German numbers. Tiger 712 used around 195 liters per 100 kilometers, about 1.2 gallons per mile, giving it a top range of around 117 miles with a full tank. But things changed dramatically on rough terrain. When tested over hills, mud, sand, and water obstacles, the Tiger burned through 132 gallons in just 32 miles, leaving only 8 gallons in reserve. That meant about 4 gallons per mile, reducing its range to only 34 miles. When the tank was tested under simulated battle conditions, quick starts and stops, turning, turret rotation, idling, and heavy radio use, fuel consumption rose to 6 gallons per mile. Under these conditions, the tank could only go about 23 miles before running dry. These results revealed a serious weakness. While the Tiger was nearly unbeatable in direct combat, it couldn't fight for long without a constant supply of fuel. Keeping it moving required huge amounts of gasoline that would overload any supply system. In actual battle, a Tiger battalion needed massive amounts of fuel just to stay mobile. Engineers at Aberdeen calculated that one Tiger in regular combat used between 1,500 and 2,000 gallons of fuel per week. A unit of 20 Tigers needed 30,000 to 40,000 gallons each week, just for the tanks themselves. This didn't even include fuel for support vehicles like trucks, half-tracks, and recovery machines. For comparison, a U.S. tank battalion with 53 Sherman tanks needed about 65,000 gallons per week for all its vehicles combined. That meant German Tiger units with less than half the number of tanks used almost as much fuel, and sometimes even more once support vehicles were counted. Colonel Barnes compiled all of Aberdine's test results into classified reports and sent them to U.S. Armored divisions in October 1943. The reports confirmed that the Tiger was a powerful machine with unmatched armor and a gun that could destroy any Allied tank from over 2,000 meters away. But they also revealed its fatal flaw. It couldn't operate far without fuel. Even under perfect road conditions, its range was only about 120 miles. In real combat, it dropped to 30 or 40 miles. Without a steady fuel supply, Tigers would be forced to stop. And once stopped, they were helpless. The reports advised cutting off German fuel supplies as the best way to neutralize the Tiger threat. Intelligence officers compared Aberdine's test data with captured German supply records and found how badly Germany struggled to keep Tigers running. The analysis showed that German logistics in 1943-1944 could barely meet Tiger fuel needs, even in the best circumstances. With Allied air attacks systematically destroying supply lines, fuel shortages would inevitably reduce Tiger effectiveness. The Tiger's heavy fuel use explained strange patterns Allied intelligence had noticed during 1943. Heavy tank battalions rarely moved more than 30 to 40 kilometers from supply bases. Tigers avoided long marches when possible and often held static defensive positions instead of chasing retreating enemies. This was not just tactical choice, but a necessity caused by limited range. Captured German unit diaries from several fronts confirmed this pattern. The war diary of Heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101 in Normandy in summer 1944 recorded repeated fuel shortages. A July 8 entry praised good combat results. 16 Shermans and 3 Cromwells destroyed for the loss of 1 Tiger to mechanical failure, but said fuel ran out after only 4 hours of fighting. The battalion had to wait for fuel trucks while the enemy withdrew. Pursuit was impossible. The July 20th entry recorded a 40% cut in fuel allocations and orders to conserve fuel. Tigers were restricted to defensive roles until supplies improved. An August 6th entry said 3 Tigers were abandoned during the retreat from the Falaise pocket. They worked mechanically but had empty fuel tanks, and crews abandoned them on foot after attempting demolition. British intelligence shared captured documents showing the same problems elsewhere. Heavy Panzer Battalion 503 records from Italy and 5th SS Panzer Division. Wicking logs from the Eastern Front repeated the same story. Excellent combat ability, but crippled by lack of fuel. Everywhere Tigers operated, fuel shortages limited what they could do. By November 1943, American intelligence had issued tactical guidance based on Aberdine's findings. Units were told to avoid frontal attacks on Tigers when possible, and instead force them to move. Each mile a Tiger relocated burned large amounts of fuel. Extended maneuvering quickly drained their reserves. An immobilized Tiger could be bypassed or taken out with artillery and airstrikes rather than risking a direct tank fight. Late 1943 training films reflected these lessons. One film, Understanding German Heavy Tanks, explained that Tigers burned roughly 3 to 6 gallons per mile depending on terrain and combat activity, while Shermans used under 1 gallon per mile in most situations. That meant American tanks could travel 5 to 6 times farther on the same fuel. Crews were advised to use mobility, make Tigers chase American formations to waste German fuel, then attack when the Tigers could no longer maneuver. The Normandy campaign in summer 1944 confirmed Aberdine's conclusions. As Allied forces broke out from the beaches in July and August, German armor units were often unable to operate mobile defenses. Heavy panzer battalions with Tigers and Panthers were frequently immobilized not by battle damage, but by empty fuel tanks. American armored divisions advanced about 130 miles in 7 days during the breakout. Tigers could not match that pace even with full tanks. With an actual combat range of only 30 to 40 miles, Tigers could barely reposition between defensive points, much less fight across a fluid battlefield. The liberation of France in August-September 1944 provided clear proof of the fuel problem. Reconnaissance teams found many Tigers and Panthers abandoned along German retreat routes, most without serious battle damage, but with empty fuel tanks. Crews had attempted demolitions when possible, but often there was not enough fuel even to move or properly destroy vehicles, so tanks were simply left behind. The Ardennes offensive in December 1944 exposed the crisis dramatically. The Germans launched their last major Western attack under strict fuel rationing, planning movements that assumed they could capture Allied fuel depots for resupply. When those dumps were held or destroyed, the offensive collapsed. Kampfgruppe Piper, the spearhead of the 6th Panzer Army, advanced about 60 kilometers before fuel exhaustion halted their advance. Reports from the field described Tigers abandoned on roadsides by empty tanks rather than by battle damage. Major Hal D. Macau, an American officer captured during the offensive who later escaped, said German officers openly discussed the desperate need to seize Allied fuel stocks. When they failed, crews were seen siphoning fuel from disabled vehicles in frantic attempts to get even a few tanks moving. Captured German post-war records showed that fuel shortages shaped German planning from 1943 onward. Over an average service life, each Tiger used roughly 300,000 gallons of fuel. That same fuel could have powered 7 Panther tanks or 18 Panzer rifles. Germany had chosen concentrated firepower in the Tiger, but that choice came with a strategic cost. When fuel ran low, those powerful tanks became unusable, leaving forces paralyzed. The final U.S. Ordnance Assessment in March 1945 concluded that the Tiger there was an outstanding design for one-on-one combat, but a failure in logistical terms. Road fuel use was about 1.2 to 2 gallons per mile and rose to 3 to 6 gallons per mile in combat, making the Tiger unsustainable in long campaigns. Germany could build the tanks and staff them with skilled crews, but it could not supply enough fuel once Allied air attacks targeted supply lines. After the war, Allied interrogations of German tank designers confirmed this. Henschel engineers who designed the Tiger said fuel concerns had been raised during development, but were overridden by demands for maximum armor and firepower. Henschel's senior engineer testified in May 1945 that designers had calculated a road range near 120 kilometers and warned procurement officers who accepted the limit believing the Tiger's battlefield power would win quick victories. History showed that assumption was wrong. Ferdinand Porsche, whose competing Tiger design was rejected in favor of Henschel's, also testified that both designs suffered from high fuel consumption. His gasoline-electric concept was even less fuel-efficient than Henschel's mechanical system. Engineers understood that with 1942 technology, no heavy tank of 55 to 60 tons could be fuel-efficient. Military leaders, however, demanded the thickest armor and the biggest gun, whatever the supply cost. The result was a tank that could win individual fights, but could not keep fighting over long campaigns. The Tiger's huge fuel use became a standard lesson after the war. The U.S. Army Command and General Staff College used it in logistics classes to show a basic truth. A weapon that can't be kept supplied is not an effective weapon, no matter how good it is in battle. The Tiger's fearsome reputation proved the lesson again and again on European battlefields. Superior performance without sustainable supply equals strategic failure. Tiger 712 stayed at Abedine Proving Ground as a training exhibit until 1989, serving for 46 years as a physical reminder of how vital logistics are in armored warfare. The tank that terrified Allied crews in 1943 became a classroom tool, showing the link between firepower, protection, mobility, and supply. Generations of American armor officers studied it and learned how to balance those needs. In 1989, Tiger 712 was loaned to Germany for restoration and display, then later returned to the United States. It now sits at Fort Moore, Georgia, formerly Fort Benning, in the U.S. Army Armor and Cavalry Collection. The left side of its hull and turret is cut open so students can see the inside. It stands as both a monument to German engineering skill and a warning about ignoring supply realities. The capture and testing of Tiger 712 changed. Allied tank tactics for the rest of World War II. Crews learned the Tiger had a weakness bigger than any hole in its armor. It burned fuel so fast that sustained mobile operations were impossible under Allied air attack and repeated strikes on supply lines. Knowing this allowed Allied commanders to use tactics that defeated Tigers without needing equal armor or firepower. Tiger fuel consumption also influenced American tank design for decades. The M48 Patton of the 1950s managed better fuel economy, over 1 mile per gallon. Despite weighing 47 tons and mounting a powerful 90mm gun, U.S. engineers remembered that mobility depends on fuel efficiency, and efficiency requires disciplined design choices that balance competing needs. Lessons from Tiger 712 made operational range a central design goal for later American armored vehicles. Modern main battle tanks still balance firepower, protection, and mobility with sustainable logistics. The M1 Abrams, introduced in 1980, carries over 500 gallons of fuel and gets around 6 miles per gallon on roads, giving it a road range over 300 miles. Even as a 70-ton vehicle with a gas turbine, its designers ensured it could perform deep strikes and mobile operations, an approach shaped in part by what was learned from Tiger 712. The story of Tiger 712 teaches a timeless lesson. Excellent weapons need sustainable logistics to have strategic effect. The most powerful tank is useless if it sits idle, waiting for fuel that never comes. German engineering built a tactical masterpiece in the Tiger, but German logistics could not support it long-term against enemies who controlled the air and targeted supply lines. The Allies exploited that weakness decisively. Colonel George B. Jarrett, who supervised captured German equipment testing, summed up 3 years of evaluation in June 1945. The Tiger met its designers' tactical goals: strong armor, deadly long-range firepower, and good crew protection. But it failed strategically because it broke a key rule. A weapon system must be sustainable in long campaigns. The Tiger's high fuel use, mechanical complexity, and heavy logistical needs made it unsustainable in prolonged war. Germany built powerful machines they could not reliably supply. Brilliant tactical ability cannot make up for poor strategic logistics. The Tiger proved this across Europe, seen in thousands of burning or abandoned hulks from Tunisia to Berlin. Today, Tiger 712 is kept in climate-controlled storage at Fort Moore, Georgia. Its 88mm gun will never fire again, and the voracious Maybach engine will never run. But the lessons it taught still echo in every armor school, logistics course, and staff college that studies mechanized warfare. The lesson is universal. A weapon must be able to get to the fight and keep fighting. The Tiger could dominate a single battlefield by firepower and protection, but it could not reach distant front lines, sustain long operations far from supply bases, or survive systematic fuel denial by enemy air power. A tank that can do about 120 miles on roads in ideal conditions, but only about 30 miles in real combat, cannot win wars that span continents. Germany learned that through thousands of abandoned Tigers, from North Africa to Normandy to the Ardennes and Berlin. The United States learned it through careful testing of Tiger 712, and then built its armored force to value operational sustainability alongside combat power. In mechanized warfare, the side that can keep moving across distance and time wins. The Tiger ignored that rule, and history punished the mistake. Capturing and testing. Tiger 712 made clear that firepower is meaningless without fuel to reach the battlefield, and armor is useless without mobility to exploit success. The best tank in the world becomes an expensive, immobile sculpture if it cannot move to the next battle. The Tiger proved this over and over. Those who captured and tested Tiger 712 learned the lesson thoroughly and built it into doctrine. Modern armored forces remember it constantly. The 60-ton steel beast that once terrorized battlefields now teaches quietly in a Georgia museum. Its greatest contribution to military history was not the enemy tanks it destroyed, but the insight it gave about the essential link between tactical excellence and strategic sustainability. That is the complete story of Tiger 712, the most dangerous tank in the world, finally defeated not by a better gun, but by an unending appetite for fuel that German logistics could never meet. And that's the incredible story of the Tiger 712. A tank built to dominate the battlefield but defeated by its own hunger for fuel. Its legacy still teaches armies around the world that strength alone means nothing without sustainability. Thanks for watching this deep look into World War II history. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more untold moments from the war, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned to WW2 Reels, where history's greatest machines and battles come back to life.